welcome to another What Goes On podcast. Today we are very lucky we have this man, Mr. Jesse Hoff. You look.
I'm very lucky to have me.
Yeah, you are very lucky. You're a beautiful man. Jesse Hoff of Lazy J, Amps, and many other things. I've known Jesse for how many years now?
Oh, man, 15. Has it been 15? That's around the time.
When did you join Chandler's?
2006.
Yeah.
So 14 years.
Yeah. Jesse was the amp.
So you were there when Jesse started?
Yeah, when Jesse started.
Okay.
Terry Britton actually linked you up, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
So it's all, many things we have to thank for Terry Britton for.
Oh my God. I met Terry in 99.
Yeah.
When I was here in England for a year in 99. And you know, I put an ad in Loot magazine. Remember Loot, the yellow?
Yeah.
Loot, London Loot magazine?
Yeah.
Quality amp service at affordable prices and stuff, you know, like I was here for a year. I thought, well, you know, got to make some money while you're here. How are we going to do this? You know, so I put this ad in. And from this ad, I met all these people. You know, Terry was one of them. And so I started working on all his amps in the studio.
Yeah, a lot of amps.
Yeah, he did.
It was like a rotation.
Yeah.
Pick two up, bring two more back.
Yeah. I mean, he was just, and Terry's such a lovely guy, and so he, you know, and like it often happens, you know, like you meet people, you do stuff, and they sort of add to your circle of friends, you know, like those sort of wider circle of friends. And it wasn't until years later, I think we had moved back to England when Sarah was just one. 2006, and I was doing the same thing again, trying to build a repair business.
Yeah.
And then one day I got a call from Terry, who I hadn't spoken to in a couple of years, and and Terry said they're looking for someone at Chandler's, can I put your name forward? And he brought me in there, and the rest is history.
Yeah, in that tiny little repair shop out the back.
I know.
Yeah, fixing the amps very, very loud.
Yeah, I think Andrew hated me.
Yeah, he did.
I'm surprised they didn't put you down in the basement, because there was quite a big basement, wasn't there?
I think
that's where Dave
Peterson
Peterson used to work. But I mean, he had a completely different style to Jesse, the way, because you just hear these noises coming out, and then Jesse came in and was like gagang, gagang, gagang.
Yeah, it was like I was playing. I needed to hear the amps, you know. I can't fool around with damn sine waves and stuff. That's not that. Guitars don't sound like that.
No.
Put a guitar through it. Let's listen to this, you know. And no, we got to listen to it loud.
Yeah.
How is someone going to play it? That's kind of how you got to test it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a thing.
But yeah, we had lots of good times. It was actually a really good time, because we all had. I mean, the job. We loved the job, loved the people around us.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the management were a little bit weird, but
Hey, Paula.
yeah. But it felt like a really nice gaggle of people, and the other cool thing was everybody had was trying their own thing. So you could bat ideas back, just like we do, you know, in that community kind of thing. When I started Monty's, I always wanted to see if I can get back to that kind of thing, because it's when I lost it, when I left, it was like big old heart.
It's kind of like leaving school, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you have this totally taken for granted social network and support group, and then you're just out.
And it isn't just about, you know, the things we did there, you know, like the guitars and amps and stuff. It's about, you know, the world. It's about, you know, like, you know, when you have other problems, you know, things you worry about, things that happened, you know, maybe relationship problems, anything, you know, we'll talk about anything. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
It really was, you know, like, and I'm
time.
thinking about that now. It was a very, very special and privileged time to be part of something like that, too. You know, I mean, I got to be there for 10 years. Longest job I've ever had.
Wow.
Apart from Lazy J.
Yeah. Well, that's not really a job.
Yeah.
That's a labor of love. That's what I'd be doing if I wasn't doing anything.
Drilling chassis.
Yeah, that's my favorite. With the Dremel, you know, like to get all the burrs off.
Oh man,
that noise, that's my favorite.
Because I used to go over to Jesse's house and help build parts and stuff, and every time he'd drill the chassis and then do the Dremel bit, and he'd look at me and go, "This is the true sound of a Lazy J." this Dremel going. Oh man, that was character building noise. That was.
Yeah, it was good.
I'm
But
pleased I don't have to hand drill chassis anymore. That was not.
So when
fun.
did you stop doing that?
Fairly quickly, I couldn't afford to lose any more blood. I can remember I made like 4 little choppers and delivered them, and every chassis had some of my blood on it. Just catching myself on.
see, that's love.
It is. It's love.
That's how people know that you really give of yourself.
You deliver the amp and your hands are all cut up and bandaged.
Physically
There you
suffering for your art.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's one way of looking at it.
Man, it's I don't know. It's as much of all of that as we can retain. I think, you know, like the that sort of. You remember when you started out, and it's all like, you know, you don't want, you have no idea how it's going to go, where it's going to go. You just do this, and then it seems to be going somewhere, and all of that. There's so much passion and excitement and in it that's hard to, you know. And I think it's kind of like life, you know, that when there's so much novelty when you're young because you do everything for the first time, and then as you go, it's kind of harder to keep that kind of excitement going about anything you do, and it's nice to find angles sometimes, even this, you know, talking about all this, you know, like this is nice. It kind of brings back these sort of this buzz, you know, like, hey, because we used to sit around and shoot the shit all the time, and over there at Chandler's or wherever it was, you know, like, and over the years, and there's a lot of memories that you could go into detail about, you know, that we're not going to do, but there's a lot of stuff there, and we got to create more stuff. We got to find excitement that helps us go, I think, to go forward and still be excited, you know, and so you look at the products and whatever you do, you know, the amps and pickups and pedals and, you know, all this stuff, and you got to find new
something that gives you joy.
New ground, a new. Sometimes maybe I just need a vacation. I just need a year off, so and then I can go back to this. Oh my God, check this out! This is awesome.
Like going way back when. How did you start getting into like music and stuff?
Music, listening and playing to music.
Just
music in general, rock and roll. I have to say, the first sort of real kind of, there are certain songs that are in my head that I think probably stand out as sort of key moments when I thought, wow, this is cool. One of those songs was "Hey Willie" by the Hollies, "Brown Sugar" by the Stones. That is still a song, when that comes on the radio, I turn it up. I think it's still one of the most amazing songs ever written and recorded. I mean, it's got a sax solo in it.
In cool as that.
It's awesome, you know.
Can you put your finger on what it was about either or both of those songs that really kind of grabbed you?
Probably not. You know, I wasn't listening up and going, oh my God. I had other songs a bit later that did that to me. But these two songs, you know, and I don't know why "Hey Willie" and "Brown Sugar" they had a groove. I think I picked up on a groove, something that was really,
so it's a
deep.
rhythmic.
I think so. Yeah. Another song that then later when that came out, or, you know, I heard it on the radio really late at night. I was sort of dozing off. The radio was on the nightstand, and I heard "Revolution Blues" by Neil Young, and that grabbed me. That grabbed me on a yeah, again, it was a rhythmic thing, but it was also a lyrical thing. You know, like I mean, the words and the whole thing. It's like, I don't know. Suddenly, I listened up. I was like, this is special. And I think there are probably sort of moments in life where you have that, you know, where something that connects. I mean, and it could not necessarily music even, but it could be, you could be looking at a scenery or something, and it just feels like home. And that's what happened with the music. It just felt like home, you know, like those things did.
Yeah.
And then, so when I started playing guitar, I was probably around 15. Yeah. I played all acoustic because I was so into Neil Young and all that singer-songwriter stuff. And so I played, and then James Taylor, and so I didn't play electric until quite a bit later, probably 3 years later, that I started getting electric. Gibson 345 was my first electric I ever had.
It's not a bad one.
You know, and then amps, that was a hard thing to pin down. You know, like the first amp I had was I think a PV Bandit.
Classic.
And then Music Man.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, one of the big ones with like valve output stage and solid state front end.
Yeah, it was one of those, and I can't remember the exact model. And then I got a Fender. I got a Fender 75. I think they came out in the latter part of the 1970s, and it was black. And it was one of those Rivera designed amps, you know, with lots of push-pull pots on and stuff. But if you just did none of that and you just turned it up, that's when I heard the sound I wanted to hear for the first time.
Right.
It was reminiscent of the sounds that I heard on the record, the records that I liked. And so at that point I kind of locked in on Fender.
Yeah.
And then I went back to drooling over the
catalog.
The covers of the record covers, albums, right? Like and there's this famous photo of Neil Young recording in the barn on the back of the Harvest album. And they got all the gear set up on hay bales and stuff like that, you know. And then there in the corner there was like this Fender Showman, like this early '60s Fender Showman. And I was like, that is so cool. And then I found one in the music store, and that's when I got into vintage Fender. You know, like it's the '63 Showman.
You're right.
I got that.
It's the thin one and the white one. Yeah.
Do you have to use the heat gun though?
Just cut them all up and then do the heat gun outside. This is a working workshop.
Yeah. This is cool. See?
Yeah.
And this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then then I got the Fender Showman, and that's when I really got into the old gear.
Yeah.
You know, that's when so suddenly all this push pull stuff and everything. From then on, I wasn't interested in that anymore at all. It was literally, get the sound as simplistically as possible.
Yeah.
Right. Like so. From then on, I was really into single channel amps. Like with minimal tone shaping, just past the harmonics, past everything, like through as untarnished as possible. And the amps that did that well, they were always the amps that I really liked.
Yeah.
So then then I learned more and more about it, fooling around with my own amps.
Yeah.
That's something I'd always done.
So are you gigging as well at this time?
Yeah. Tried to be a professional musician, which was all feast or famine. So from a certain point onwards, the sort of fixing amps on the side was another form of income that really helped.
Not to mention, if you're using vintage amps, you would have to either fix them or find someone else to fix
I
them.
know. And if you want, and I also wanted to understand what made them good,
Yeah.
and see, and this is the cool thing anyway. Like, so you deal with old amps, right? They come from a time, and then you look into why are they the way they are,
Yeah.
right? And then you realize, okay, they didn't just sort of pop up, and they fit into that space and time,
Yeah.
right? So mid 50s amps or whatever, early 50s amps, late 50s, and then into the 60s, and you think, what was music doing at that time?
Right.
You know, so I think.
And
So
do
we
you
can-
do you think that amps drove the music, or the music drove the amps?
I think that I think it's the chicken and the egg.
Mm.
It's both. You know, I think it's the relationship between the musicians and the amp makers.
Mm.
You know, so when you morphed from say the big band sound of the late 40s into the 50s, and then we go from there into Chuck Berry.
Mm.
You know, like and later, you know, Scotty Moore, and you know, like in Elvis. The music morphed, it changed. You know, you suddenly had small rock and roll bands with bass and drums and a guitar. and I think, and I read about this somewhere, I think in Forrest White's book, I think he talked about how people used to come to Fender and bring, you know, one of the Fender amps in there and say, can you make it louder?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, so as, you know, so suddenly amps got louder,
Yeah.
you know, because they were asking for it, you know, so I think that's how the music changed. You know, suddenly equipment became available that made certain things possible, but also this new equipment was being asked for. You know,
Yeah.
it seemed to be, you know, so there's always, I guess, if I think of it as sort of air masses or something, you know, kind of moving towards each other, and at the front they kind of start doing this, and
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and that is random,
Mm.
and wherever that leads and takes it, you know, that to me, I find that beautiful. You know, like there's this serendipity thing that happens.
Mm.
So I'm thinking that. So then now we're in the say 1980s, and I'm using old amps.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking about that. And then, of course, you think, well, okay, that was going on musically at that time. The reason the amp is that way is because the designer of the amp settled on that. I mean, you could very easily change it and make it different, you know, like, so that it is the sound that moment required.
Mm.
But does it have to be the sound? Is it still the best sound, or are there other possibilities? So then that's when you start messing around with that.
Yeah.
And to me, that was a real eye opener, you know. And in that sense, you know, like I honestly believe, to, you know, paraphrase, I think it's not Newton actually who said it, but he's often quoted as having said it. We're standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah.
And I think we are standing on the shoulders of giants, and so my ambition was never to reinvent the wheel. It was all, you know, that was already a good wheel.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So what could you do from here, though? And since we are now not musically confined to a period, right? Like, I mean, using an amp, let's say like a Tweed Deluxe, which is what I had in the 90s, and you try to, you know, it was the only amp I had, so I had to make it as universal as it could be to fit into, you know, certain different, you know, into rooms, into scenarios. And it wasn't a very good amp for that, really, you know, because it, you know, it broke up too quickly, and, you know, how would it be a better live amp? So you start messing with that, you know. But because you're standing on the shoulders of giants, you can now, you know, go and explore, you know, because now, see, the music isn't just Chuck Berry and rock and roll anymore. Like, the music has now morphed through folk rock into British rock into, you know, funk, and, you know, and the new romantics and heavy metal and whatever came along the way. Now we're in the 90s. We've come through all this stuff, and you know, so we got like a palette of sounds to possibly apply to this old amp. And, you know, what can it do? You know, like, and you try and tweak around and see what it can do. You know, and I think that is the privilege that we have by being able to start from a very high point and look further down the road than they could. You know, and then, yeah, and that's beautiful. You know, to me, that is like, we're a passenger. We get to also be be the driver.
Yeah.
You know, like it's a bit of both.
Mm.
You know, and yeah, I like that.
And do you? I'm trying to formulate the question really, but when you talk about an amp that's come from the 50s and you tweak it, but there are all of these different musical genres.
Mm.
When did you kind of make your peace with the fact that it wasn't going to be right for everyone? So the hair metal guy probably wasn't going to use one of your amps to play Guns N' Roses covers.
Well, the funny thing was that I never really had to make that decision, you know, because I was, you know, I had been playing for a long time and had been listening to, or, you know, in the bands I was in, there was always something that I wanted to hear. Like, I wanted it to sound a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd tweak around with my amps until I got from my amps, and also to mention that cruiser pedal, which I actually first designed in the 90s, because...
Really? That far back?
Yeah, because there wasn't anything like it. And what I really wanted was a Klon, but they were really hard to come by. And so I designed the cruiser pedal thinking it would be kind of like what a Klon would do. And then when I finally got a Klon, I was like, yeah, I finally got the real thing. And I couldn't get along with it.
Mm.
And I'd gotten very used to the cruiser. And something... I think, well, Jonas, who you know.
Yeah.
Do you know Jonas?
No.
Yeah, good. He's a friend of ours. He's in Los Angeles now, but he's originally from Belgium.
Okay.
You know, beautiful person.
Yeah.
No, he once brought from Belgium. He brought someone's amp. You know, like one of those Fender. I think it was one of those red knob twin amps that this guy had bought, and he wasn't happy with it. So Jonas said, you know, he came back from Belgium. You know, he came past my place. He said he asked me, would you be kind enough to take a look at this and see if you can make it, you know, a bit like something more like what the guy wanted to hear, which of course is a guess, right? What does he want to hear? And so I had Jonas play, like, you know, we used to do that a lot. You know, okay, you play, I make some changes, play again, go back and forth. You know, I love this A/B stuff. It's beautiful, and you have certain expectations even when you do it. Like, you know, if I think if I change this capacitor value for this, or if I change it to a different, you know, material,
Yeah. Then it's going to sound like that.
yeah, I think that's what we're going to get. And sometimes you don't, but it's kind of interesting to do all that stuff, right? And Jonas, you know, he's a consistent player, so I could get him to play the same thing with the same intensity over, you know, several times in a row, going back and forth. And we were tweaking, and after a while, Jonas said, "This is beginning to sound more and more like a Lazy J amp." And I was like, "Really?" And he says, yeah, you must have a sound in your head that you instinctively go for, that you tweak around until it sounds like that.
Yeah, but I think you're only ever going to make great what you really love. It's like you hear it from like comedians. They write what makes them laugh.
Yeah.
So you've got to go and you've got to do that. So yeah, everything that you make is going to have that certain things. Like your amps have always got the highs. If we were actually talking about this morning, it's when you drag your nail across the string, it's kind of, you've got this like stuff really like that, and then, you know, the J's have got that kind of bloom thing going on. It's, you know, I really do believe you only make great what you love.
Yeah,
that's the only way to do it.
Yeah, I think you know, like you asked me before, you know, what records or music grabbed you first. You don't know why it grabbed you, you know, but there was something in it that grabbed you, and that kind of resonated with you. Now, you know, something else would have resonated with you, or anyone else, and I think that's what that is. You can't really pinpoint even what it is, but it somehow in you there's this thing, and that's you. That is you. And so if you build something, you make something, you build it according to that, to all of that stuff that's in you, and then it comes out like that, and that represents me. And when you build yours, it represents you because you've gone through the same process, but, you know, with different ingredients.
Yeah.
And I think, again, that's beautiful serendipity.
Yeah.
I think, you know, if you, you know, because you can be passionate about that. You know, you can't be passionate about something you don't really believe in, or if you do it for the wrong reasons. If you only do it because there's money in it, or if you you do it because someone said, "Oh, can you make me that?" You know, rather than actually doing it because you feel something from it.
Mm.
You know, it's kind of like learning at school. You know, and at school they say to you, "Yeah, we're going to learn history now," and you have you're like 15 years old and you know nothing about history, and I don't have any interest in it either.
Yeah.
And you can't really learn it, and it means nothing. You know, there's no way to connect with history at 15.
Yeah.
Maybe there's for some people. For me, it was impossible.
It doesn't feel like there's an application.
Yeah.
Like what am I going to do with this?
Yeah. But now I can't get away from it.
Yeah.
I'm so fascinated by history. I think now I could go to university and I would want to read history.
Yeah.
I'm really blown away with history, and I think it's a lot like that. You need to feel the connection before you can really get good at absorbing it and then reflecting it again.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same with the music and all of that, you know. So it's a beautiful random thing.
And that absorbing and reflecting or projecting it, I think that is exactly what you do when you're creating stuff, because all of those formulative, like the music that you listen to, the music that you played, that you were drawn to, all of that stuff kind of goes into your mind, and without you knowing, it forms this kind of thing that you desire to hear or see or feel or whatever. And it's not a conscious thing that I want it to sound like this. It's just like, does this sound better or does this sound better? And I think that's why the A-B thing is so powerful.
Yeah.
Because you're forced to choose, well, can I actually hear a difference between these two things?
Yes. But that's when other people come in, right? People you trust. So even my beautiful wife, you know, who has a great pair of ears, and so I'd bring her in on this sometimes, you know, and kind of go, look, what difference can you hear, or can you hear a difference? You know, in the tiny change, say switching from silver mica cap to a different, you know, material, and she always heard what I heard without me prompting her. You know, like always saying, you know, this one seems to have a chimier top. You know, it sounds more like a wine glass when you ping it, or something. You know, she'd use. You know, she'd use different kind of analogies to express the sound, you know, like, but it was always exactly what I heard too. So then that I trusted, you know, like after we'd done that enough times, I always trusted that. And then I was also very lucky that when I made the J40, which was a beautiful player, John Paratelli, who had heard a J80, and he said, I love that, but I want exactly half of it. I want like half of the power, half of the speakers, half the weight, you know, and of course you can't just build it like that, you know. So I you know, tried to design this J40, which it then became, and I had a working prototype, and that I felt like, okay, this is going in the right direction now. This is where we're at, but now I need other ears.
Yeah.
So, you know, I remember calling Ross Eward, you know, like, beautiful player, beautiful guy. I think he was still in Guildford at the time. I said, hey, you have any time? Come on down. And I remember sitting in the room, the two of us doing exactly the same thing again. What do you think? You know, going back and forth, you know, like, and having access to these people whose opinions and who's playing and but also whose opinions I really trusted about what they felt was good about it, and what maybe could be changed or could be improved, or could even just be, that's not really for me, you know. Like, so at the time he was talking about the bottom end being too punchy, and I agreed with him, and that's also something that I heard, you know, like, okay, you know, then, but then at that point, then that's where the whole blackface and tweed thing then came about. Right. So I thought about it, came up with a solution where I could soften the bottom end and, you know, and generally just brown the response out, and then it became a thing. It became an amp model that then became a thing in its own right, and I like that I have access, and I've always been lucky enough to have access to these people whose opinions are really valuable to me. Yeah. And they're all good friends, and they're all people who you know, I try to keep in my life, in my big circle of people that are in my life. You know, which I like a big circle of people in my life.
Yeah, big circle's good.
It's good.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, so that's how that works.
So when was it that kind of Lazy J became a thing?
Well, now you remember I told you I designed this cruiser pedal back in the 90s, and then when and I'd fix people's amps on the side and I'd play. And when I fixed people's amps, like often I'd show them this, or they'd say, "What's that?" And then I'd show it to them, and I'd sell one to them, and usually when people came that I came in contact with, they would buy one. They weren't painted, or if they were painted, they had no writing on. It was very crude. And then at some point, I thought, maybe I should try and sell them on eBay. Mm-hmm. This was probably the time, maybe around the time I joined Chandler's.
Okay.
Around that time, maybe slightly before that, I can't remember, but around that time I had this thought that, maybe you can put them on eBay, but of course I didn't have a name. So I thought, well, it has to have a name, but what am I going to call it? And then I got stuck over and over again with, I couldn't think of anything. I mean, think of a name, and it sounds like it's an easy thing to do, but it's like.
But it's got to have connotations that, like any name that you give anything, like a band or a child or anything, it makes you automatically have feelings towards that thing before you've encountered it. So that's why a product name is so difficult.
I found it's incredibly hard, and I frustrated myself with it, and then I gave up. I'd walk away from the whole thing, the whole idea of putting the things on eBay until I ran out of money again. Then I thought maybe it's it's like a good, maybe I should put it on eBay. Oh yeah, I've got to think of a name. What are we gonna? Okay, and then one fine day, my daughter was. Maybe one, I think, around that time. I sat there at the computer, and that was in Croydon.
Right. Okay.
Sat at the computer, and I got really angry at myself. I mean, I was livid, for being so lame, and I was kind of getting furious with myself, now you're gonna find a fucking name and you're gonna fucking, can we swear on this?
Yeah.
All right. So I was pissed off, and in my pissed off kind of mood at myself, I started cussing at myself, calling myself a lazy fucker, and stop being so fucking lazy, and there was that word lazy.
Yeah.
Just stood there suddenly. And somehow that lazy Jesse, Lazy J, that sounds like a ranch. And a lot of ranches in the Southwest are named like the Lazy T. And I thought that actually has a ring to it. I thought I liked it.
Yeah.
And I googled it, and sure enough, there's a ranch out there somewhere. and I thought that's pretty cool. I love the Southwest, and I spent quite a bit of time there, and it's spiritual, and it's everything I think I would want what I do to stand for. That kind of, and then I opened the Word document, kind of banged through some fonts that I liked. I came up with this font. And I thought, Lazy J, but the J at the end doesn't look good. Move it in the middle, make it big. And within 20 minutes, I had the name and the logo.
That's good.
And so that's when Lazy J then was officially a thing.
No, you just had the cruiser then.
Yeah, and so I just had the cruiser. So I started, making up a silkscreen in the Word document, right? I mean, the whole thing is, that's all. I mean, I'm a computer hack, right? So I opened the Word document. I kind of I got the outline right, and then I was okay, that's, and move the writing here, and and I kind of laid it all out in this Word document, and then I printed it off on an acetate, right? And that is and that is still today. That's where the writing on the cruiser comes from.
Wow.
It's still
The original acetate.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's amazing.
And and so that was the artwork on a Word document in acetate. The logo itself too, when you look at it close up, right? When I also did the same thing. So I kind of got the size right for the badge, and then I printed it on an acetate, and of course it came out all jagged. The outlines aren't smooth, so they're like really, if you look at it close up, you know, it's like and I thought when I got them to print the first few badges, you know, they would clean that up. But they didn't. And so I was looking at it, and it was like, it looks like Sarah did it with a crayon. And but then I didn't have any money to do that again and whatever. So, you know, they then went on the first few amps. I remember, you know, 100 logos or 100 badges were about 20 quid more than 50. So I got 100 of them made, right? I remember unwrapping the first stack, which was like 20 of them.
Oh no!
And then and I was like, okay, I took one out and put it on the amp, put the other box, you know, with the other 80 in, put it up on the shelf, and said goodbye. You know, because I was thinking, well, I'm never going to need these. I mean, there's no way in the world that I'll ever sell 100 amps.
Yeah.
And I put the first one on the first Lazy J amp, and there was somebody who knew me or something, you know, because by that time, this was, I don't know, 2008. I built an amp for myself because, you know, we made the decision to finally settle in England because the school was about to start and there were other reasons. And I left all my gear in America, so I ended up by building an amp based on my modified Tweed Deluxe and that then became the first J20. And then somebody heard that and they said, "Can you make me one?" And so I made one, and that's really how it began. You know, that's how the whole thing started with the amps.
Yeah.
In 2008, we had made one amp for myself, and I remember sitting in with Beautiful Losers in Gong Show, and somebody heard the amp there. He said, "What's that?" Didn't have a badge on it then, you know, and they said, "Yeah, oh, can you make me one? Can you make me one?" And so that's how it began. Like the first few people that were sort of friends of friends or in the inner circle kind of thing, they would ask, and I'd make one, and I'd make another one, and I'd make another one. Then eventually, and actually quite quickly, Dennis Greaves, who plays guitar for 9 Below Zero.
Oh yeah.
No, I'd been fixing his amps for years, and I knew him, and they were making a new record at the time, and he said, "Yeah, man, we're in the studio. Why don't you send your new amp over here and let's check it out." So I did. Drove over there. You know, I drove to Beckenham. That's where Mark Feltham lives.
Right.
And, you know, the harmonica player from 9 Below Zero. That's also where Phil Harris lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a key moment in the whole story. But, you know, this thing about you know, Dennis using the amp, you know, he called me the following weekend. Or after the weekend. This was on Friday, and I think he called me on the Monday. He said, "Man, David Burlock from Guitarist Magazine, he happened to be in the studio, and he played through the amp, and he said he wants to review it." And at the same time, Phil Harris also heard the amp that night, you know, like, because I stopped at his place. I hadn't seen him in a couple of years, but I stopped at his place because I was selling a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I had this AC30 that he really wanted, so I figured I'd drop the AC30 off. And he said, "Man, let me hear that little amp," because he knew I was going on to Mark's to drop it off there, and so that's how that began. And he was you know, his column in Guitar and Bass magazine was all about having, you know, how vintage is always better. Invariably, it's always better. You know, and you know, you don't even need to try the new stuff. You know, vintage is always better. And then he wrote an article about that he had just found something that has the DNA of the vintage, but is, you know, maybe And he basically, the gist of the article was that maybe the old can be taken and be brought into the 21st century. Maybe that is actually possible. You know, like, and before he ruled that out, and now he opened himself up to, and it was because he heard and played through that, you know, prototype J20, and so he became a big supporter. And so then very quickly there are 2 articles that came out. You know, one in Guitar and Bass, I think that was in April, and then the next one in Guitarist, the review came out in Guitarist, and suddenly it wasn't just people asking who knew me from Chandler's or who knew me from, you know, personally, but I remember one of the next inquiries I had was from a guy in Canada.
Wow.
He's in Toronto. We're still friends now, and that was my first real international order, you know, and that was like, wow, this is incredible, you know, like, maybe, because at this point it seemed that I had something, but I didn't know what to do with it. I don't know how to sell amps. I'm not a businessman. I don't know how to be an amp company. It was like, what do you do with this now? And little by little, you know, people from the internet, you know, kept emailing and saying, can you make me, you know, it just grew like that. And so I never, you know, so the amps were never in stores. I never, you know, I got busy building these amps without ever having to go down any other route or even explore any other route. And it's actually, it's the only way I know how to be.
Yeah.
You know, small. I mean, I like my world where I can see everything.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's difficult for me to live in a world where, you know, that is so far flung that I can't see the edges. You know, that I find that, well, if not unsettling, but it's just not me.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like home.
So sending stuff out to be sold via somebody else and you don't get to have any interaction with the end user is a bit weird.
Well, I wouldn't know how to create that scenario. You know, like putting an amp in stores, and then it becomes impersonal as well. You know, like, and I wouldn't say that's a bad thing to do. You know, like, it's just not a thing. Well, I mean, first of all, how would you cater to that kind of demand? Like, if you put amps in stores in, say, around the world, you know, like, and suddenly, what if you got like 500 orders for amps? You know, then you suddenly would need, you know, lots of hands, and then of course, does it then change the product? We talked about that before when you said, you know, like, do we now cut corners? How are you gonna make 500 amps in a given time frame that without compromising something? You know, and it's a bit of a walk, you know. You got to walk, you know. You weave your way through it and try to come up with a philosophy that where you're comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess that's how it's always been. And that's how, you know, and that's the only way I've felt comfortable in myself. There's this compass or something that I have that when I feel that I'm way off track, I feel really uncomfortable. I get this is, you know, no, I'm not happy here. It's kind of like our cat, you know. She knows exactly. She comes walking on the driveway with us, right? And then suddenly she stops, and we'll walk on, and she'll stop, and she maybe tries and go another couple of steps, and then she'll stop, and then she'll whine and yell, but she will not go further. You know, it's as if she feels like, no, this is my territory. Doesn't go beyond here.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what there is. There must be other smells and other, you know, and she won't go any further. Now, I don't want to be quite like that.
Yeah.
But I understand that there's something in me that says, you know, this isn't my turf here.
Yeah.
You know, and I've always listened to that, and so I've always found a way, or somehow life has always brought me back into my comfort zone. I don't want my comfort zone to be a chair, like a cozy chair. You know, I want my comfort zone to expand too, but I got to do it. You know,
do it your way.
Slowly.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. That's kind of.
And also that way of running a business, because that's what it is. You know, regardless of how you how you want to name it, you are running a business.
Yeah.
That way of doing it is a much more kind of what am I trying to say? It's a much more kind of artistic way of doing it than businessy way of running it, because you're being driven by all of the kind of interaction and relationship that you have with the people, and that's what's driving you to keep making and keep
I've
innovating.
enjoyed. You know, that's why.
And it's not the money. So if it were the money, then you just make everything super efficient, and the love would kind of go out.
I mean,
of
the
it.
money is a factor, of course. You know, like you.
Well, we got to pay the rent.
Yeah. So we can't ever disconnect ourselves completely from the you know, the economic considerations here. You know, like but it isn't the motivating factor. You know, like well, you know,
exactly.
whichever way it began.
Or not
you
the
know.
major motivating factor anyway, because paying the rent's quite a motivator.
Well, absolutely,
Food on table and
maybe not motivating, but it's I don't know. It's just like one of those things that you gotta unfortunately bring into the equation. Like if you were independently wealthy, you know, and you could work completely independent from any financial consideration, you'd still be working like this because this is how I feel it should be done. That's how you know, I sit there and I build it, and then you know, and the wires go a certain way. And I know everyone has their own certain way that they do things, but I can, you know, I don't know. Sometimes even to the point of being boring. That's why I said I need a vacation.
Yeah.
You know, maybe run the wires the other way around next time. You know what I'm saying? I'm going the other way, man. You know,
Limited edition.
yeah.
You even have like a way you take the wires off the reel the same way, don't you? Down to that.
So I have, and I'm sure you similarly, try and make as little variation between amps as I possibly can of the same model. So for little choppers, and I went and saw what's David Gilmour's
Phil
guy?
Taylor.
Yes, Phil Taylor. And he said, have you ever tried plugging a cable in the other way around? And I just went down that rabbit hole and spent quite a lot of time listening to wires the other way around.
You had too much time on your hands, of course, you know, at the time.
You had too few orders, yeah, exactly. But anyway, long story short, so now I follow, there's a protocol for which way every wire goes into one of my amps to try and mitigate against variances. So all like little chopper upwards, all of those amps have wires that go in a specific direction, and that's how I make them.
It's crazy, isn't it? You know,
and it makes a difference. It makes a difference. It's like that, you know, we can all get to like 90%. And then maybe a few can get to 95, and it's that last 5% which takes a lot of effort.
Yeah, and even recognizing that, you know, because and that's the crazy thing is that Fender never did any of that.
Yeah,
you know, when they were in, you know, mass producing their amps in the 50s, you know, they had a factory and there were people, a lot of Mexican people building these amps. They were following ABC steps. They were not musicians. They didn't even get to hear the final product. And they certainly didn't pay any attention to which way around the wire went. You know, they kind of grabbed this out of a box. That's a transformer. That's the output transformer. There's some tube sockets, and they bolted it all in with prescribed parts.
Yeah.
And maybe there's also some randomness in that you know that is beautiful.
Yeah, and it's just a different way of looking at it. And I think what you said earlier about, you know, being the passenger and then the driver, we can be the passenger for all of the things that Fender and Hiwatt and Marshall and Matchless did up until that point. And then we can say, well, I wonder if I did such and such. I wonder what would happen if I did that.
Yeah, and it's even where the thought process begins, that perhaps I wonder what, you know, what if. The fact that you even have that then puts you into a driving seat, right? Because you now begin to wonder, and the moment you begin to wonder, you begin to, you know, theorize about alternatives and stuff, and then you become the driver, you know, of this fine bus.
My fine bus.
It's a good bus.
It's a good bus. Got no wheels, but it's a bus.
It's a bus, you know, like well, at least with no wheels, you don't get busted for drinking tequila at the wheel.
That's true. That is true. There are bonuses to
Yeah,
everything.
yeah. See, there's a silver lining, and I do mean silver. That is my preferred color of tequila.
I thought it was about buses.
Well, yeah, we can make the bus silver too. You know?
Silver all the way through.
No, beautiful. Yeah, and and then it goes, you know, also because I work from home, I built these amps at home, and so I became, in that sense, I was a stay-home dad. I worked at home, so I saw my little girl grow up. I was there for, I wasn't one of those dads that even went to work at like 7 a.m. and then comes back late at night and really only spends time with their kids on weekends. And that also figures into everything, like that also has a profound effect on the way my life has been, and then that of course also affects everything else, so I look back now over that time, which I know I've just looked back over that time because I just cleaned out my workshop, which I had never done in 10 years, and it was beautiful what I came across. It's gorgeous things, beautiful memories and everything, and then you realize how much of this you can actually pinpoint, like certain moments in space and time.
Like a diary.
Yeah.
You see a thing and it's like,
Yeah, like you're saying, Sarah used to come in and make you little trinkets and things.
Yeah.
And you sort of held it and you could then sort of almost feel your little
the
Sarah.
little girl,
Not big Sarah, actually,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, and it's all beautiful. I mean, seriously, I it's very emotional for me that, but I feel also that all that emotion all ends up in whatever it is you do. So when you're building amps, there's a lot of that stuff, the focus that you have, the anger over politics.
Is that a J20 with a little bit more drive on it or something?
Yeah.
Breaks up a little bit.
Yeah, it's I guess it all, it's all in there somewhere. So, again, I guess you could think about it in great detail, and it's probably just totally random, and I actually like that we don't know very much about tomorrow.
Yeah.
That there is still this unpredictability of, well, tomorrow I could walk around this corner and I could either get hit by a bus or I could, the most magical thing could happen, like that, and we don't know.
Yeah, but you have to walk around the corner.
You got to walk around the corner. That's why we got to keep walking, right?
Yeah.
And I love these conversations. We've had lots of them over the years, man. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
and still no one's been hit by a bus.
No. Not even a silver
We're still
bus.
walking.
With no wheels.
With no wheels.
Yeah.
I've been hit with tequila a couple of times though.
Yeah.
Weesh.
That was good.
Yeah. They used to have at Chandler's. There was tea time, which was tequila time,
Right.
and
Tea as in letter T.
yeah, as in tea time. And I can't drink tequila. It turns me. You gave me one once, and I went green. But there was a guy called Leon. He does grizzly guitars now, and you and him used to have this little tot.
Yeah. Tea time.
Tea time.
Tea time. We used to drink out of these 35 millimeter film canisters. They were our shot glasses. Man, those are good times, And it's not. Yeah. Leon, he would always be up for tequila.
Yeah, always.
Yeah,
always. He's a good man.
Yeah, we will see more of him again in the near future.
Is he coming back now?
On the 20th.
Wicked.
He's moving to Walthamstow. So next one out from. I heard that.
Yeah.
I think it was me.
It was my stomach. I don't know what it was saying.
You want another 24-hour fast thing?
No.
Right.
I'd had lunch before Jesse came in.
That'll do it.
Yeah.
Them burritos things.
Yeah, exactly.
But
no, that's cool. Get the old gang back together.
Yeah, honestly, and we should, revisit these curries.
Yes. Curry brings everything together. We have pizza pizza nights too.
Yeah.
You know, food is a great thing.
It is a great thing.
Conversation is different when you're eating. Obviously, like mechanically, it's
Yeah,
different.
it's very different. Yeah,
But you have pondering time whilst you're eating, so
Yeah,
someone
yeah.
can say something, and you don't get this feeling like you have to say something
Film
straight away.
silence.
Yeah.
Because you've just shoved a whole naan in your mouth. But you know, it's
Peshwari naan at that.
Peshwari naan. Yeah.
It can't be anything else.
Yeah. They're very specific about the naans. But yeah.
Yeah.
So have you got any? I mean, I suppose you kind of answered this question already. But have you got any plans for the future with Lazy J, or are you literally just going to be going around corners?
I just want to break even.
Yeah,
That's the dream.
break even.
Plans for the future. I see sunny climes, and
Not just because of global warming.
yeah.
Guildford.
You know, the
Sunny
sea
Guildford.
levels remain where they are. No, plans for the future. I like what I do, and so I want to certainly keep that as it is. Possibly adding to it. You know, I got a couple of pedals coming out. To add to the whole range. They're not necessarily going to be just exclusively available on the Lazy J website or whatever. I'm thinking of possibly, making it so. I designed them in a way that they are easier to build. The Cruiser has an incredible amount of hand wiring in it. These pedals are more easier to assemble. and therefore less time. Less expensive to make, less time wasting, less. There's still, of course, the way the PCB is built and everything, and with through-hole plating, and as solidly as possible to guarantee the quality, because we don't want these things to break.
No.
But then try to put them out at a more affordable price in another larger scale. That's sort of beginning into a direction.
Yeah.
Where that then goes, I don't know. I will not compromise the bespoke side of the whole Lazy J thing. That will always be what I do, and would there be a way to perhaps I've been thinking about this to add a model to the whole range that would be more affordable, like an entry level thing. I think about this, and we'll talk more about that over curry.
Yeah, that's the same thing. I think Ducati famously did it with. They brought out a motorbike called the Monster. And before then, I've bored you silly about this, but
Not bored.
But
Well, not silly anyway.
Ducati are really, expensive bikes. They're always beautiful, really quick, and all that kind of stuff. But loads of people wanted to be a part of the brand. That's why they sell so many T-shirts and hats and stuff.
Yeah.
But they brought out the Monster ones, which is, I think it was one of the first naked bikes. They stripped all the sports stuff off it, all the extra stuff. So then people could come in to what they call it the Ducatista, I think it is.
Yeah.
So they have this Ducati family thing. They have events and everything. They really could go whole hog with it, and it is amazing because people just want to be a part of
tribe.
That tribe. What's going on?
Yeah.
It's their
These things become a family, right?
Yeah.
And I think. And actually, that's an interesting phenomenon. This whole with the internet these days, talking about Lazy J, I'm sure it's the same for Monty's and Audio Kitchen. That this family is literally becomes a global group, and we're in contact, and they're in contact with each other as well, not just through me or my website. There's people, that are, it's a random kind of thing, but it exists now, and you can, and what I like is that you can that you can reach people beyond your immediate surroundings. So if I want to and I have thoughts on being charitable and stuff like that, and I think that, and I know you do too, and sometimes having access to people all over the world that aren't in my inner circle as such, people I know, and being able to put the word out about something, or to put, to get someone to contribute to, or get people to contribute to a cause, and put that, if we all know, I don't know, say 100 people, and 1,000 people that all know 100 people, that goes far and wide, and you can reach a lot of people in trying to perhaps, give something back.
Yeah.
And to me, so that's the whole family aspect of what we do, and I would never want to lose that. That, to me, that's very important. In fact, that's the whole thing that I think makes all of this really worthwhile.
Yeah.
So long may she run.
You've sort of answered it indirectly through all of the talking that you've done about the amps, but could you put your finger on why so many people have gravitated towards, let's just say, I guess probably the J20 is your most popular amp. What can you encapsulate the reason why that has drawn so many people to it?
I think a general trend towards more lower powered amps. Okay. In general, that's something that just happened through in-ear monitoring and generally better PA systems and everything else, and just generally keeping stage levels quieter. Saying that, the J20 is not a quiet amp, but and I think with a lot of people looking towards that kind of power level, like gravitating generally towards that sort of 20 watt kind of level, I happened to be coming along with it at the right time. There was there was a sort of a trend. See, that goes back to do you think the music affected the amps, or the amps affected the music? I think it's both. Yeah. And so the J20 covers a lot of ground. It fits into a lot of scenarios that regular musicians find themselves in bars and whatnot, but then also on big stages, because you can always make it as loud as you want it to be,
because you have a PA.
Yeah. But making an amp quieter is always harder than making an amp louder.
Yeah.
So so my advice was always, identify where you spend 80% of your time, with an amp, and buy an amp for that 80%. Don't buy an amp for the 20%, those potential 20% that may or may not happen, because but what if we get a gig at Wembley, Yeah, but
something.
I think if you get the gig at Wembley, then we'll talk again. But first, live in the real world and get an amp that covers, the ground where you find yourself actually, and
that's an interesting point, because having the honesty to be able to appraise where you spend 80% of your time, that's like you've got to be honest that I'm playing pubs.
Yeah.
And I'm not playing stadiums, so buying the 4x12 and the 100-watt head just kind of massages my ego a little bit, but not necessarily the lower vertebrae of my spine.
No,
as I'm loading in and out.
Didn't everyone?
Yeah.
I mean, the 80s were like that. When I moved to England around that time in 1985, when I first came here, I remember the choice was, shall I get the 100-watt Marshall or the 50-watt? Well, we're playing in pubs. Yeah, but what if we get the bigger gigs? And it's only £100 more to buy the 100-watt. It's like,
more is better, right?
Oh my God. And then luckily we all feel a little better now. I think this general move towards more controllable amps, I welcome that, and actually, playing in clubs in America, that was always much more of a noise conscious environment than here. I always felt that British pubs were incredible. If you went, when the band was playing, they were incredibly loud. you know, and playing here myself, you know, for years, you know, like I remember those my ears ringing and not being, and standing right in front of my amp, not being able to actually hear it. It was just noise on the stage, you know, very difficult to actually home in on like detail. So once you actually come down and then make the sound together, you know, like between all of you, then you actually suddenly you have detail, you have stereo, you know, depending on, you know, you really, and you can play with each other and to, you know, to what you're hearing. It's so that changes everything. And luckily I find that probably maybe it's become a bit more disciplined like that in general, that with a, you know, that move towards lower power. I mean, you know, all these same people that used to play in pubs with 50 watt amps, you know, often now play in pubs with 20 watt amps. So did they ever really need the 50 watt amps, or was it that, you know, but nobody would have considered taking a 20 watt amp in a pub back then.
No.
You know, no, you had to have at least 50.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what it was, but it's beautiful to remember those times. You know,
I remember loading two Marshall 4x12s and 200 watt heads into the back of my Vauxhall Corsa, and it was being like
you
that,
really meant it,
with pedal boards and everything.
Yeah, the headlights going up like that.
Yes, what are you doing? Playing like the Dog and Duck in Balham or something.
Oh my god.
So, we've all made choices.
Yeah, but you know, it brought us
didn't do that
here.
too much.
But it's nice to have those memories. I think, you know, there were good times in there.
And it's a learning experience. It kind of forms what you are after that, doesn't it? You kind of, like you say, everyone has it because everyone sort of has to go through it.
Yeah, it's kind of like your childhood, right?
Maybe I'm different. Maybe I really do need the 100 watt head and the two 4x12s because I'm that guy, and then you realise fairly quickly that you're not that guy.
Yeah.
And actually a 20 watt amp is probably exactly what you need.
You know, the best we can ever hope for in life as we go is, the best thing to acquire is humility.
Yes.
You know, in a sense of realism, and I think, you know, and of course it must not encroach upon your sense of positivity. You know, you still got to believe that somewhere there in the distance there is, you know, this nirvana you aspire
There's
to.
good shit ahead.
Yeah. But you know, like, stay humble, as you know, that's the thing. We gotta stay humble as we go, and listen more. You know, because that's what the good shit is.
Yes.
And I think the nice thing about running a company is that you do stay humble, because like 90% of the time is just grafting and climbing up the rock face, and then you get to the top occasionally and it's like, yeah, this is why I'm doing this stuff, and then it's back to climbing up the rock face.
I mean, like,
it's just through that
it was
cloud.
just a ledge.
It's still going.
Yeah, it's just a ledge. You know, like, got to keep climbing. And meanwhile,
have a rest.
the devil's chasing you. Like, he's always hot on your heels.
Rent.
Yeah, that's how it goes, man. But you know, as long as you know, but this, right? Like, sitting around doing this right now, you know, that makes it all worthwhile. You know, the curries and the talks about the world and the pep talks and the advice and, you know, everything that comes with that. You know, the family again, this big family. That is why I think that's a big part of the reward.
Yes.
You know, I think.
Yeah. Like, a bit like Cheers, so you go in and everyone knows you.
Yeah, everybody knows your name.
Exactly like that.
Exactly like
that.
Exactly like that.
But with coffee.
Yeah.
And sometimes tequila.
In a silver bus with no wheels.
Yeah. See, now if I'd planned this right, I would have brought some tequila.
No, so that's all good, man. That's all good. My body is a temple.
Oh man.
But well, not really. But yeah, man. I mean, I think that's quite nicely draws it to a close, really.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thanks for asking me to come here.
Well, thanks for
Thank you.
coming
Oh,
down,
it's
man.
great to hang with you guys. We should do this every week.
Yeah, I'm up for that. That's
The cereal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, let's do it. And
There's so many other stories I haven't asked about. And the one thing I do want to say, I remember at the Olympics when it was in London, and I had spoken to you earlier that day because the Who were playing, and the Who were using Lazy J amps, and but because it was the Olympics, all the logos had to be taped up and stuff, and watching, and you actually saw, it's Alan Rogan, God rest his soul, walking back across the stage, and he just grabs a bit of the tape and pulls it off.
Yeah,
And there's this Lazy J logo coming out.
Yeah,
with a
the
bit
tape
of
was
gaffer
like
tape.
hanging there.
Yeah.
It was, man. I wrote Alan, beautiful man that he was. I miss him. You miss him. I know. I can't even put into words what he did, how important he was in my life in the 10 years that I knew him. And so I wrote a little tribute when he passed away in July, and it's about that. It's on my Facebook page. You want to go to it and read it. It's like it's about exactly how the whole the rundown, how that began. Like when Alan called me, I happened to be in Italy, which was our first family vacation in years, because you know the backstory, and asking me for amps. He said, Pete's amps are scattered and buried, and I need a couple of J20s for the Olympics next week. And and then it just went on from there, and then so by the time the closing ceremony happened, I was back in England, and watched the whole damn thing, and I was like, and it wasn't easy viewing.
No. It was it
was long. And then they extinguished the Olympic flame, and I thought, it's over now. Are they still going to play? But it was also so meaningful in a way, like it's symbolic, because as they extinguished the flame, it was dark in the stadium, and they were panning around the stadium, and there was only this red phoenix hanging over the whole scene, which was symbolizing the spirit of the Olympics, this phoenix rising and taking it to where the next Olympics are going to be. Now that the light going out and the phoenix rising, that was my life. I mean, that was so symbolic of the way the past few years had been, that it was unbelievable. And then within sort of the 30 seconds of silence, suddenly there's this bang, this big opening chord of Barbara O'Reilly, and they pan to the stage, and there's the Lazy J amps, and and just prior to that, just before, my phone pinged. I got a message on my phone, and I left it alone from I didn't know who texted me at like midnight, and and I got so excited. I was like, oh my God, I gotta tell someone. And I grabbed my phone, because I couldn't call anyone in England at that time, so I was going to call someone in the States, and then I saw the text that had just come in was from Alan, and he said, hey, I peeled the tape off your logo, living on the edge, rock and roll, AR, and then I just burst into tears. It was like, because it was just so, again, people like him and other people and just the world had like extending itself to me in this most amazing way that I could have never asked for or expected, and so much shit had happened in those few years before, and I'd been financially really up against it, because of bad things and bad people, and then to that, and this was kind of like, that phoenix was rising, and there was Alan and these random acts of kindness and all, and what it did more than anything else, it made me have faith in the world again. That there's people out there, and there's the world out there, and there's energy, good energy out there, and if you put good energy out, hopefully some of it will come back. And I think that's what, so to me, the Olympics, that's what that all symbolizes for me, that and Alan, like you said, God rest his soul. Are you going to Bush Hall in April? Yeah,
I'll be there.
Good. Yeah, we gotta send him off.
Yeah, man. But he's a good man. He did lots for me. I just went round to his house, And he's just like, oh look, you come over, because this is when he asked me to do the mini humbuckers for Pete.
Yeah.
And I went round there, and he was like, well, actually, whilst you're here, do you want to take all the stats from my other guitars? Went up to his office room, and then there's this vault in it.
Yeah.
Literally open. It's like proper like open that, and then there was just racks and racks and racks of old guitar cases.
It was unbelievable.
It was crazy. It was just like at one point he had three. I think it was like 60, 61, 335s each at like God, Lord knows how much money they are. But he'd been collecting them over time, and he literally let me take them all apart and like go through them.
Wow.
So much stuff. And you know, he put me in touch with loads of other people. He's just very, very, he's very kind man.
Yeah, I think if he liked you, he'd always have you in mind. You know, like you might not hear from him for a while. You know, I remember when after Pete started using the J20s. This was back in 2010. Alan, because the Who weren't touring at the time, so Alan was on the road. He says, "I'm going out with Tom Petty," and he said, "I need 2 of these amps with me, and don't worry, they're not coming back." And a month later, I got a check in the mail from Joe Walsh, and another check from Mike Campbell, Mike and Marcy Campbell, and you're just thinking, how the hell do I deserve this guy? You know, like and so how you can't make that happen.
No,
it just happens. Like you said, all you can do is keep walking and turn the corners.
Yeah, but again, it goes back to that whole thing of just do good stuff with good people, and good things happen.
Yeah,
and also just be nice.
Yeah, exactly.
It's,
just don't be an asshole.
Yeah,
that is kind of like your 10 Commandments rolled into one.
Well, there's that story. There's that story with Pete. That was Pete was saying about it. That book of the 10 Commandments is like actually what that God had placed this stone up there that actually all it had on it was just be nice, or something like one thing. And they were just like, oh no, it's got to be more complicated with that. So they went up. Moses went up and then made it all these other ones. Yeah.
See, now we need more. It's like that doesn't cover it anymore. But if we go back to just be nice, it actually would cover it all.
I think so.
And we still can't be nice.
No.
No, but we try.
We try. Yeah. Absolutely.
You can only do what you can do. And on that bombshell.
Yeah, beautiful. See, now if we could all do a shot of tequila to wrap it all up, that would be poetic.
Yeah, and then you just see me.
Yeah,
that would be poetic.
I'd look good on the t-shirt.
Just t-shirt.
Yeah, just bomb.
The rest of Monday is a haze.
Yeah. There you go. Designed by Jesse Hoff. The bomb shirt.
On that bombshell.
But thanks again for coming down.
No, thanks, man. Beautiful.
Before we get on to another story, I'm going to turn this all off.
Yeah, turn it off. Turn it off.